Guys, and welcome back. This is ChosenArchitect. Today we are going to be setting up NuclearCraft Fission. So I hope you guys are ready. So I've done a few things in between episodes, got a bit of work done. Over here on the periodical table, we are now 42% complete, as I have just been putting all of the items that I think is in our system. I've been putting them towards this. So that's where my EMC has been going. My EMC has kind of been draining because of that, which is fine because we have more to replace it. I also finally ended up getting a piece of thorium, which is great. So we can now take that and throw this in our system, pull out 16 and see where our quest is going to go. And this is the thorium down here as well. We need to find out. Okay, so this is going to take us into this. Oh, that's what I was hoping it was going to do. Take us into the fusion controller, the uranium, which we do have because I finally purchased it. I hope this isn't like radioactive while on us as the element, but there we go. And that opens up a few new things. The fuel reprocessor is going to be an item that we definitely need to make sure we look into. And then we also have the fusion controller, which is another item that we're going to have to look into. Luckily, we have made all of the stuff pretty much already, like beforehand. So the fusion stuff is hopefully going to help us get some power. The fuel reprocessor, I believe, is going to be how we get a few of the other things. And we need Neptunium? Neptunium. Right. And this is going to come from what? Where does Neptunium come from? Let's see. It comes from, okay, an isotope. So it comes from a byproduct, is what it looks like. Ingot former. It is definitely a byproduct of something. And Neptunium oxide is just something that had oxygen canisters added to it. Depleted fuel can produce it. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely going to be coming from something that has been depleted. And Lind 236 fuel and Hind produces both of these things. And you kind of just have to look through what it takes to make this, and you can see Neptunium is definitely something that is a big part of this. And this is kind of where NuclearCraft can start to get a little bit confusing. So today, it looks like we're going to be making reactor stuff. So let's go back into here. And you remember we set these things up. And I went ahead and got the fuel set up that we are going to be experimenting with today. And that's going to involve uranium. But we can't really make these fuels without a few machines. And that's going to mean we're going to have to, for one thing, farm some more steel. We have to gather some more steel, make some more tough alloy. There's a few more things that we're going to have to push towards for that. I've already been working on getting all that done, so we have tons and tons of coal. Let's actually make sure we have more of that by just throwing it down in here. But what we're going to work on is going to be very easy. It's going to be a very simple fission machine, right? We have a fission controller that we need to make, but this isn't going to be the difficult part. The difficult part is finding a fission setup, right? And I'm going to be using one that is from the user called Hamubrai 1337. There's a whole list of them on the FTB wiki. This is trademarked Pocket Star that we're going to be making. It's a very simple build, uses very minimal resources, and is very efficient. So it's going to work for us. We're going to need also a few things. We're going to need also a lapis cooler. These are things that are going to be required to make this thing. We're going to need ourselves reactor cells as well. And then we're also going to need some casing. So we're going to need some fission reactor casing as well. Now to make the fuel, that's a little bit different, right? To make this fuel, we're going to need to break down these isotopes. And to do that, I believe, let's see, it'll be the, let's go back a couple. This right here. To get the uranium, not the oxide, just the uranium itself. Isotope separator. That's what we need. So we need an isotope separator. This is how we're going to break down uranium itself. And that's what's going to give us all the goodies. So we should have enough, I think, to make an isotope separator, because we need to get this started as fast as possible. Let's just first make our machine case. And if we don't have lead, that's fine. Looks like that's all we're missing is a little bit of lead. We can go ahead and pull that out, unlock this recipe, lock that recipe. And we can go ahead and fill that in so we can make sure we get enough lead for this process. Because we're going to need a bit of it. We're definitely going to need a bit of it. Isotope separator, a little bit of redstone, a little bit of this here and there. Was it just 2? I think we needed per, wasn't it? So yeah, we're going to need steel. So I'm going to do a little bit of processing of some more items, but we'll be able to get those done pretty quickly as we move on into the fission reactor. I'm kind of excited. So the NuclearCraft fission setup can be a little bit daunting at first and a little bit complicated, but I think overall it's a very easy concept to understand. I'm gonna try my best to explain it to you guys. So you have a few different parts. You have your fission reactor casing, which is going to be the outer shell that surrounds your machine or surrounds your fission reactor. You're going to have your self-reactor cells, which is where your fuel is going to go. And it's basically how much fuel can go in at once. So you have right here the basic low-grade fuel. Your basic, this is about as basic as it gets, is your LEU 235 fuel. And if you hold shift, you can kind of see what this says. It says base processing time 60 minutes. That's for one, right? And that's if you had just, I assume if you had just one reactor cell. And that's how this is going to work. It's going to produce 120 RF per tick as its base power. Its heat gen is going to be 50 heat units per tick. And the heat units are very important because we need to cool this in a very efficient manner. And lapis coolers, or there's a whole bunch of coolers from NuclearCraft. There's a whole bunch of different types. You have empty coolers, you have water coolers. You could use things like this. We're going to talk a little bit about the specific one that I'm going to be building today. And you're going to notice once we place down our actual fission controller, you'll be able to see how this is going to work. So let's go ahead and pull some of the materials out. I have been working on getting a few materials done up. And we need to actually make this thing. So this is going to require a bunch of tough alloy, which I thought I just put in there. Did I not just put a bunch of tough alloy? I think it needs something else other than tough alloy. So it needs this magnesium. What is this stuff? Boron and magnesium. I don't know if we have magnesium. We do. So good, looky here. So we're going to need to definitely place this in, and we're going to have to get a few of these alloys here. This was something that I overlooked. But anyways, so I think it was just mixed with boron. We're probably not going to need much of this. Much of this stuff. So let's go ahead and combine this. This will go really fast. So yes, we need to go ahead and make the controller. And like I said, there's a few things here, like these rods and stuff that we're going to have to make. Let's go ahead and get that. This is a very important step. There we go. There's the 2. And we're also going to need the NuclearCraft, which this is pretty basic in what it is. We are going to need a bunch of these basic platings today. I'm going to make a few for right now. 64 if we have it. There we go. That'll be good enough. We'll have to make some more lead potentially. But that should allow us to make these. Okay. So we need 2 furnaces. We need 2 apiece. There are those done. And machine casing, or machine chassis. We need lead. So yeah, more lead. By the way, I already made the isotope separator. It is running. It's basically processing uranium ingots, turning it into uranium-238 and tiny clumps of uranium-235. These are very important. We're going to be using both of those to make our basic fuel. So here is our fission controller. Very important machine right there. And here's where we kind of need to make a few blocks. We're going to need about 24 for this particular machine. So 24, I'll go with 28. But 23 is technically all we need to build this. We need our fission controller. For this particular setup, so we have a few different types of fuel. For this one, for the low grade, while we're working with the low grade and I want it to process fast, we're going to go with 4 reactor cells. But if I was to move up to the HEU fuel cell, we cannot use 4 cells. And I'll talk about that in more detail later on, because right now we're going to be working with the low grade fuel. So we're gonna need a little bit of glass, and I don't think it has to be clear, quite clear. But I'm gonna need 4 of these for now. And then we're also need 4 of these lapis coolers as well. Later on, when we go to potentially using the HEU, which is going to give us more RF for our bang for our buck, but it will require less, like we won't be able to use as many reactor cells, and we'll have to use more coolers. So the 2 empty coolers, we are going to need 4 coolers, 4 lapis coolers in particular. So that is going to be a bit of lapis. I hope I have enough. That's enough for 4. So it looks like we're going to have enough. And this right here is the basis of how we're going to build this. We're also going to need a lever. And we're going to need some means of moving power around and storing power potentially, like a capacitor bank would work. Of course, we don't have the capacitor banks yet, but a capacitor bank, just a regular capacitor bank, would actually be pretty decent for this setup, just so we have a buffer storage of power. I just wish the capacitors weren't so expensive. We're gonna have to worry about that later. It does have an internal buffer. Let's get some conduit. I might just reroute everything in our base, because these conduits will support 640 RF per tick. And I might just route cable over here. So we're going to build this over here. And then we get to talk a little bit about how this is going to work. Because it can be kind of, like I said, daunting. A little bit daunting. So this is not going to be directly in the center, but I'm going to try and make sure my controller is in the center, which the controller is going to be right here. So here is how this is going to be placed. Right in here is going to be our controller. I actually want to lift this one up off the ground. So we'll have our platform built like this. This will be the start of everything. And we're going to go ahead and build our internals. And this is where I'm going to talk about this. This has to be touching at least 1 reactor cell and needs to be touching at least 1 reactor casing. And it really matters when you're building in a larger scale setup. But some of these coolers can't be touching one another. So you get some of these weird designs you have to work with. But this one is pretty simple. We're going to just separate these things just like so. So right here, this is not touching. This actually should be touching a cooler on both sides here. Like so. So this is touching a cooler on both sides. And let me make sure that I am remembering this properly. This can go here. And then we need to remember to make sure you don't want reactor cells touching one another. That's like a big no-no, because that generates a lot of heat. But you can kind of see that there are no reactor cells touching one another, and they're all adjacent to a cooler. And we'll talk about the cooling values here in a second. So let's just go ahead and cover this up. I'm leaving this slot for the controller. So just like this, you just want to cover up your cube on all sides. You don't have to cover the corners. Doesn't really matter with that. But there we go. We pretty much have ourselves a reactor that is going to be producing. Now, don't be scared of this reactor, because there's nothing to be scared of, right? So you can see right here, this is our max. This is our negative amount of heat, right, that we can support. So we can support up to 480 heat units per tick before we start receiving heat, and which eventually, if the heat peaks, it will explode. This thing will blow up. So you need to be cautious of what type of fuel you're putting in here. Notice that the base heat gen for this is 50. So that means if we have 4 cells in here, that should equal 200 heat that this is going to be generating, heat per tick, right? And so this setup should support 140 or 480 heat units per tick without having any issues. So we should be just fine, and we have 4 cells available, which means we should be able to put 1 unit in here. It'll burn 4 times as fast. If we just put 1 fuel in, it'll burn 4 times as fast. So mind that 60 minutes should take 15 minutes there. And we should get a byproduct, which is actually what we need. And it should also multiply by 4 the base power. So let's go test that out. Let's go make our fuel and see if our theories are correct. I'm hoping so. So we'll take our base stuff here. This needs to be converted into uranium-235. And to make this, we just surround it with 238. And this will get us your basic LEU fuel, what we need, right? We only have enough for 2 right now. So we'll go and throw that in there. So let's test our theory. Let's see if this is actually going to produce as much power as I think it's going to produce, right? So it should produce, what is it? 120 times 4. It's going to get us 480 RF per tick, roughly. So let's just throw 1, and it should say about 15 minutes processing time. Right, so we throw it in there, and then this actually needs a lever to turn on. So I'm going to flip on a lever here. And you can see right here our heat dropped to negative 280, which is perfect. And we're producing 480 RF per tick, and the fuel remaining time is 15 minutes for this one fuel. So this little 2x2 fission reactor is very efficient in what it does. It works very well in this little small form factor. This thing is producing 480 RF per tick. And this has the potential later on, once we get into higher tier fuels, like the HEU fuel, which is not hard to get. It just is basically more of the 235 to produce this one fuel. This, in a different little format where we only have 2 cells and we fill the rest of the spaces with coolers, that will produce a lot more, because we'll have 2 and 480 will put us over 1,000 RF per tick. So overall, this is perfect. This stores, it looks like 512,000 RF per tick in a storage buffer. And of course, there's nowhere for the power to go, so it's just kind of burning through the fuel right now. And there's nowhere for this fuel to go anywhere. You can shut this off, and it will shut the timer off. It just completely kills the thing. And so you could make it even more efficient and say, okay, if there is power, you could set up some kind of gate and say, okay, if there is power in this network, which you can do with Ender.io, there is a power monitor right here. Of course, this is the see-through one. There's a power monitor. So this will detect the power that is connected on this network. And you could set up a redstone system to shut this off when there isn't power being used. And so, but for the moment, we want to go through all this fuel. We really do. Because we want to end up with a product that is going to be like the burnt fuel, the, what is it called? The exposed, I can't remember exactly what it's called. But it's going to be used in their fuel reprocessor, right? Depleted. Yeah, we should end up with some depleted fuel. This right here. We should end up with depleted LEU 235. That's going to give us a little tiny clump of the newtonium right here that we're going to need later on. And we're going to get a little bit of plutonium, but we're going to get mainly the newtonium, which I think is what we needed down here, right? Yes, we needed newtonium. And that is how we're going to get this, right? We're going to need it through this, and we're going to basically need all these tiny piles to be figured out, to be done. So I'm not worried about making a fuel reprocessor just yet, even though I know it is very important. This is mainly what we need to be processing up, getting this going faster. And of course, we can throw these speed upgrades in here to make it go way faster. I'm going to go ahead and route the power cables, these power cables specifically. I'm going to just route them through the ground. I'm going to have to make a few more, and I'm going to put them over here so they're hooked up to our system, and we should have a pretty nice power system. I'm also going to hook it up to this as well, so we always have power there. I think this is going to work out pretty good. So there is just right under 10 seconds left on this fuel remaining. As you can see, I went ahead and made some more fuel, and yeah, we're just about to run out, and that gets us depleted LEU fuel. Perfect. So I went ahead, and while I got all this wiring done, because underneath these blocks, right below this oak plank, we do have our cabling all in place. And what we need to do now is throw this in here, and this is where all the magic happens, right? I can speed this up. And voila, we got 8 tiny clumps, almost enough. Almost enough to get us the newtonium. Right. That would have been nice if it would have gave us more than 8, but we end up getting back tiny clumps of uranium, which is actually good, right? We want these things. We want these tiny clumps of uranium because they're not easy to get. the 308 and we can remake more. Look at that. We just ended up managing to make ourselves some more. And that's just how this is going to flow. And you could set this up next to your machine over here and have it automatically go in, which probably would be a good idea to just have like a conduit system pull out what is trash and kind of have it reprocessed over in the corner. That might be something we set up later on when we go to set up automation for this guy. So overall, I think we learned a lot today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And also give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate all the support on this series. Guys, I hope to see you in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching.